Hi everybody, welcome to Natin Sports Pets and Fun. How are you doing? We're going to talk today about why you get back pain, or one of the reasons, some of the reasons why you get back pain and back compression, and how to solve it. How mobility will help you to gain, of course, mobility, and of course, which strength exercises can help you a lot with your back pain. Especially, we're going to talk about the squat and why the squat is one of the best exercises there, and how it can solve your back pain. But also be careful, it can make it worse if you do it bad, if you choose bad percentages of weight, bad weights, or bad variations of it. A badly taught squat is really bad, but a well done squat will solve a lot of your problems. In further videos, we're going to talk on how the deadlift can actually help you with your upper body posture. And as you know, in my videos, posture is king, and it is the cause and the solution to many of your problems. And how you choose exercises are and how they influence on your bad posture and your back pain. Let's say too much bench press, too many push-ups, and no pull-ups, no face pulls, no rowing motions. Those things may influence also. But today it's more emphasized on the real causes of your back pain, how to gain mobility, and how to squat and solve that back pain once and for all. Let's do this. So first thing, we're gonna look at some vertebrae from animals, and they mostly are quadruped, or they swim, but we have some bipedal animals. But what you can see is that their spines are slightly different than ours. Quadruped animals are subjected more to shearing forces, and because of the way their body is composed, they will shear more, they will twist more when they move. And like even birds, like the chicken here, that's bipedal, but it's more slightly not straight up over the hips. The weight is distributed with a lot of curvatures, but the spine is still somewhat horizontal, and then with a vertical component with a very marked S in the neck, right? And this will provide shearing forces, but very little compression. But when we see the human spine, it has that curved form naturally, but you see we are stacked vertically completely. And this means compression is a big component that a lot of animals do not experiment. We are a very special animal in that sense. And this compression will be more aggravated. It will become worse with time, because the flexible parts will be compressed permanently because of gravity and some activities we do. The mobility will be reduced, and now we will have compression and a little shearing within the bony components of the back. So if you take that into consideration, plus the fact that there's caves in Spain where they found very antique men and women that lived in a savage way, or semi-savage way, let's say. The eldest were 30 years old, the women. The eldest men were like 23 or 25. Their teeth were destroyed, their backs were destroyed, and multiple fractures, and etc. That tells us all how harsh life was. But it also tells us how their backs, when they found their backbones were like really old people's backbones, but they were actually not that old. It's just a compression in modern life can get you to experiment back pain, or what you think is back pain, because that is also very individual. Maybe you feel you have pain, but it's just the fact that
your back is getting old because of the compression, and you don't have the musculature or the flexibility and mobility to deal with that, right? So you have to attack it through the two-pronged system, which is make it stronger and make her more mobile, stable, and flexible. So we make a lot of mistakes, especially we think that mobility will make us stronger. No, that won't make us stronger. You have to put more weight on it. You gotta to stimulate the bones, to strengthen, but in a correct manner, of course, right? You have to flex it and extend it, which is another thing our back does, and very poor technique or science on it tells us it doesn't, that we have to extend it or hyperextend it. That's the only way we give the mobility. But we forget that it does flex, and we forget the flexing part of it in the safe way. And the other thing we do is that we forget that the spine works with the whole body, right? It's the main part of the whole body. And that a very nice way to evaluate our spine health is through the squat, weighted and unweighted, especially unweighted. But we go to the gym and they tell us you do a squat, but your knees don't have to pass your toes, or just a particular way to squat. There's a lot of ways to squat, right? And this is a big mistake, because now we're going to specialize in one way of moving, generally with the spine overly extended, even hyperextended, and with our knees placed in a bad place, or our ankles forced to not move, or to compensate for the lack of flexibility in the spine and the knees, and they have to be firm or overly mobile for you to squat. And you can see that in the three images we have very different ways to squat, with neutral spine, with a somewhat flexed, and flexed in the bottom, and with the knees overpassing the toes, with the legs more separated, and with the knees not passing the toes. So there's a lot of ways in your body move, and you have to be proficient in all of them, right, to be healthy. And you have to feed all the movements of your back in order for it to be healthy. And with age, you have to strengthen it, right? And surgery is not the best answer in all cases, because mostly 1/3 of the back surgeries will be successful and eliminate pain, mostly because normally there's nothing really there. It's just the fact that you have 30 years of compression in your back and very poor mobility or very poor strength. So if you go to a doctor and he sees your back, he will probably find something on it, because your back has been vertical 30 years, and that's it. And maybe it's not really something that's damaged or something that's actually painful. It's just that it's a nuisance, but you don't have the mobility or the strength to deal with it. And this is the other thing. When you go to gyms and you weight the squat, especially with the overhead version, which is much harder on your back, much harder to do, that I have said, you see that his back is flexed. He's a great lifter, and that's like 190 kilos on top of his back, no problem. Or 100 something, 170, 180, something like that. A lot of weight. That's more than 300 pounds. You see his back has a flexion, which is natural. His shoulders are flexible enough, and his ankles, or knees, and hips are flexible enough. Look at those knees overpassing his toes. How many times have you gone to the gym and these fitness instructors tell us our knees don't need to pass, or don't have to, and it's awful if they pass their toes? Tell that to Olympic weightlifters. Tell that to world record holders. There's very different ways to squat, and I'm going to explain them in this video. So stay tuned.
Okay, guys, we're gonna talk about the relationship between flexion and extension on your back. and why that causes tension and pain on your lower back. We already discussed the compression our back receives by standing, all right? But now we're gonna discuss the things we do in our daily lives that make the back pain and the tension in your hip flexors increase. Mostly the cause is the invention of chairs. And not only the invention of chairs necessarily, but how much time we spend on them now. When you're driving, you're inevitably in a chair driving a car. You get to the office, chair, right? And you're generally go back home and get on the couch, get in a chair, dinner, chair. So there's always this tense position and never a relationship between flexion and extension, right? Your back does that naturally, right? So when I'm sitting down, normally in the floor, my knees are always higher than my hips. If I do it with one leg extended, you can see that my kneecap is always higher than my hips. And there's always a relationship if I change position between if I'm extended or I'm flexed. And there's a combination position to each side. And there's other positions that make it harder. This is a great extension exercise to sit down. So what I would recommend is that when you get home in your free time, every time possible, watching TV, sit on the floor and correct those positions. You will get tired of being like this. So you'll inevitably change your position, and then you might want to work on your strength so you can extend and even lie down to watch TV or do whatever you have to do, because this relationship will help, will remind your back it can flex and it can extend, right? This is for flexibility and mobility, right? And it's not gonna make you stronger, but it's gonna make you more stable and remind your back it can move that way. Because when we're sitting down in a chair in normal conditions, you sit, your knees are same height or lower than your hips. This is the moment of tension on your hip flexors, but also it'll make your lower back tired and you'll start to slouch, especially if you're in a computer or rest, on the rest position of the chair, right? This is the rest part. So other people even lift up and this is a lot of weight and a lot of tension in the flexed position of the back. So that is not healthy, especially done during a lot of hours, right? So what I recommend is when you have power to decide if you're sitting or not, sit in different positions, sit on the floor, lie down, watch TV, do your thing on the floor. Get back to that relationship on these positions I've showed you and remind your back it can extend and it can also flex if needed, right? And now we're gonna check out some exercises for some extra work on mobility on your back. Yeah. Okay guys, we just saw the relationship of how we sit and how we spend our free time with our back tension and our back mobility. I'm gonna show you a couple of exercises that will improve on that. The first one, oh, remember, by the way, this is not a strength program or a strength exercise. As many people will tell you, this will strengthen your back. No, this will decompress and remind your back it can flex and it can extend and hyperextend even. It is good for stability, but it's not strength. First, we're gonna put our knees and our hands on the floor, shoulder width or a little more, and they're in line. And the exercise is simple. We're gonna lift this arm and the opposite leg. It'll take us to extension and hyperextension, right? And then we come to flexion again, right? And extension or hyperextension, depending on your capacity. Probably, if you're really weak and you have a big atrophy in your muscles, it will be strength training, but it's not technically strength training. The other exercise, you go to the child's pose, you'll try to hit to contact, the glute to your heel. You flex and then hyperextend your back. Not only it will help with the mobility of your back, but with the flexibility of your abs, right? Which is also participant in your lack of mobility and back pain. And now, after this, we're gonna discuss how the squat can save you from a lot of back pain. And a well-executed squat will reflect on your mobility, your back strength, and your overall health, and it will reduce the pain. So let's check that out.
Okay, here are some more mobility and flexibility exercises. Lay on your side, hands over each other, and just try to bring that hand to the floor. If you can put your shoulder blades without lifting that knee from the floor, it would be much better, right? And try to increase the range of movement slowly so you can get that spine a little more mobile. Then we're going to do that same thing for the lower part. You want to keep that leg straight, and the other one wants to go to your opposite hand or further without lifting your shoulder blades from the floor. And of course, you can do that from the opposite side. You can see my mobility issues that I've gained through years of bad coaching and poorly executed exercises. So I'm here to spare you that. This one's really good for the sling of the opposite sides. You lay down, your chest has to be on the floor, your cheek has to be looking to the back. So if you have your left leg, it's your right cheek which is touching the floor, and just extend back and down until it relaxes. This is a really good exercise. I've been getting better on it, but still I have a long way to go, and hopefully it'll be very useful for you guys. Then you do it for the other side. Remember, work bilaterally.
Now I'm going to show you what you can do to eliminate the tension that you have after you've had some back problems in the past. Maybe you had a prior injury, but you didn't go to therapy, or therapy wasn't adequate, and you didn't eliminate all the muscle contractions that feel like little bumps on your muscles, right? You're gonna use a baseball, right? Or a lacrosse ball, you can use that too. You're gonna walk it through the muscle, not the bone, right? We don't wanna contact the bone, we wanna contact the muscle and put some weight on it so this massages our back and eliminates the contractions, right? So you're gonna get on the floor, you're gonna put the baseball right under the muscle and just gonna lie down on it. You're gonna put as much pressure as you can tolerate. I can tolerate this because I have no problem here. But in a higher position, I feel a lot of pain. You can use your elbows to regulate how much you put on it, right? So let's go.
So right here, there's some specific squatting exercises, but will help you with your mobility and flexibility. You want to make sure your ankles are flexible enough for a good squat. The more straight you want to be, like in a clean or a snatch, you want to point your knees over your toes, and you can open your hips, and you're using the rail to sustain yourself, and change it now to the whole range of motion with your heels. But you see now my knees are not that far in front, and my torso is now more is not completely erect. Now I can really round up my back and come back, put some weight on the sides. You want to go through all the ranges of motions and really push those heels to the ground, because that will strengthen it. Once you get good at it, you can do it with your hands on your back, and always round and extend, always flex and extend. Do it without the help of the rail. This will take time, but once you do it, you're going to gain mobility through all the ranges of motion of all the types of squat. If you cannot put your heels on the ground with your knees overpassing, you cannot do a proper clean, at least not on depth. Now we're going to free up those ankles, and especially the fascia on your foot. Simple baseball, put some weight on it, and on all the foot, the arch, the front part, the side part, the back of it, and try to move your toes up and down, and alternate thumb up, the other toes down, toes up, thumb down. And eventually, once you get rid of all those nasty, painful parts, you will be able to put some weight on it, and the foot's gonna give in, and your mobility will be much greater, right? Everything will improve a lot, and you'll be a healthier person to do the squats. You can see my ankle mobility was lost in those years, I tell you, of bad coaching and bad cues, and now I'm struggling to get it back. But this will be very good for you guys. It's the same thing we did with the back, right? We're just getting rid of those little bumps that are very, very painful. That said, we see a Chinese weightlifter here, knees over her ankles. Look at that dorsiflexion. That means that relationship between her foot and her tibia and fibula. Look at her hip strength, and look how straight her torso is. This is the ideal squat for a clean and a snatch. This is the technique you will use for the front squat or overhead squat. It requires a lot of mobility and a lot of stability. It requires good back extension, but there's always a little bit of flexion at the bottom just to hold the weight, especially on the overhead squat. But most important, the knees in relation with the body, they point out, because if the knees are vertical, your body will be rounded and you won't be able to hold the weight. If you don't have the dorsiflexion or the flexibility of the ankles, you won't be able to catch the weight, or you catch it and it will drop in front of you. This is why that happens. And all of you CrossFit athletes that want to clean more and miss their cleans because they go backwards, or they or they just simply lose that weight and it goes to the front and you drop it, it's because of that. You're not working on the proper strength, on the proper technique, and you don't have the flexibility and mobility, the appropriate one, not the, fitness industry mainstream one. And doing a lot of repetitions in a bad manner will never make one good repetition in a good manner. So think about it. Think about changing it to a good program before you continue in CrossFit. This would be the low bar squat. This is the safest squat for beginners. And actually, I took the picture from a channel which is Starting Strength, which is really good, and I recommend you look at it. And this is very safe for your back because the leverage on the back is very low. The position is very good. The mobility and flexibility needed is average, is normal to maintain a healthy, strong back with healthy, strong legs and glutes and a good movement pattern. Remember, a squat should be a hip dominant movement, not a quad dominant movement. Those people who get quad dominant movement will aggravate all your pain, and you're not going to get really strong. You're going to get just a really weak back. And this is the overhead squat we saw before. This is partially similar to the clean squat, and this is very specific to a sport. Should you train it? Yes, I think you should. But always remember, like we saw that last picture, you need to have all the ranges of motion and all the positions dominant and all the mobility in all of the body, not only on the back, right? Not only on your ankles, like CrossFit and fitness industry gurus tell you. It's a whole thing. It works together. Your back will move according to where your knees and your ankles are and how strong the muscles holding the weight are. So I'm going to show you without my shirt on, because I want you to see my back when I do a lot of movements and I put the weight in different places and I hunch over and I don't use my ankles, right? I can drop my hips, but if I hunch over, the weight goes to the front. I fall over. Same thing, if I squat, all the weight, there's a longer lever, but I still can get that motion. If I hunch over, I will roll to the front. The same thing with the clean. Right now, I'm not straight with my torso. My knees need to point out and forward of my toes. So that will happen, and it will happen according to what squat I'm doing, where the weight is, my mobility, and if I'm doing it correctly. So in the back squat, the first thing you notice, the weight is high on my neck, and that is very risky. And the other thing, it disengages mostly my back muscles, because since I'm carrying it on the curvature of my neck, there's no need to engage my back to hold the weight. The other thing is that my lower back is more arched, and that stresses it a lot. That's why when you squat, your back hurts a lot. The other thing is that the moment arm to the knee is longer, from the mid thigh to the knee, and that will stress out your knees. So there's a lot of things happening on the back squat. But if you compare with the low back squat, in order to hold the weight, now I have to engage my back muscles. And it's in a part of my back where there's more muscle and a less long lever on my lower back. So my back can stay neutral and my neck is safe. But also the moment arm from my knee to my thigh is very short, so my knee is going to suffer very little. And now we can see between the three types of squats. The front squat, the back squat, and the low bar squat. You can see the knee always travels on top and further than the toes, but the spine is what we want to take care of. Of course, if the guy on the front squat would want to squat lower, he would have to open his hips a little more and have a little more neutral, or um, what's it called, and a little more flexed back. But in general, you can only keep the weight if your back is straight, your torso is straight, and your knees out. But let's say in the traditional back squat, we have the worst of the both worlds. You know, your torso is too straight, so it puts too much stress on your knee and then your lower back, and you have the weight on your neck, and you cannot go as low if you're not really flexible, but you really have a hard time on your back and your knees. But in the lower back, you're in a safe position with the back, just like in the front rack, and you don't need that much flexibility. You need normal flexibility. So you can see here with a human model, all the angles and the mechanical arm. And if you are a good squatter and your back is healthy, you can do all the versions of it, right? This man can do all the squats, but probably the majority of people who have bad backs cannot. So how are we going to low bar squat? Well, first of all, we are gonna stand wider than our shoulders. You're gonna see here that I'm standing less wide than my shoulders, and you're gonna see what's gonna happen after I squat. Palm to palm, put the elbows in the middle, look at the ground. But now when I had to adjust because it wasn't comfortable. If I'm wider than my shoulders, then you'll be perfect. And drive your hips up like a chain is pulling you, right? Your toes have to point out like in a 30-degree angle, and squat with your hips, look at the floor, get pulled from your hips up. Boom. Hey, that's all you have to do on the low bar squat. Always your elbows are pushing your knees out. When you do it with weight, you'll have to remember to push your knees out, right? So practice this movement pattern, and before you put weight on it, you have to practice it so your knees don't collapse, your ankles don't collapse, or you don't use your back to get up. Okay, so this is very important. Now the weight has to be in the midfoot always, and I will show you why later. But now drive with your hips. Don't try to use your thighs. Just drive your hips up because it is a hip dominant movement, right? Next thing, like I said before, you have to drive with your hips, but your whole body has to accompany the hips. If you push your hips up and your hips rise faster, you will then have to use your back to get up. So make sure everything moves accordingly. This is very important for safety. So as I said before you put some weight on it, you have to practice it and do it perfectly without weight. You got to master the movement first. Don't be anxious. Once you put weight on it, you can put 5 pounds every time you squat, right? 5 pounds next week or 5 pounds next session. You'll get stronger. Don't worry. Put 5 pounds a week. You'll get stronger very consistently. And use your hips as a hip dominant, and then your knees will rotate down as a second hinge. But the main hinge is the hip. And as you can see, the moment arm with the back is very short. So there's little stress on the back in comparison with the high bar squat. Now, in this video, my weight will be with my knees separated, pushing out, and then getting up, hinging, right? This is what happens. But what happens when you are moving forward and putting all that stress with the high bar on your lower back. You will move forward. You will tilt forward. And that might put the weight on your toes, and that will roll you over. And if you have the weight on your heels, that will shoot you back. So that is very important. You have to have the weight on the midfoot and pushing your knees out. That's why I showed you that video, right? In the high bar squat, we tend to roll over the back because that's the natural movement. But if you shift the weight to your toes, you're gonna go forward. Okay, that's what happens when we clean too, and CrossFit and a lot of things that other sports that don't teach it properly, that will happen. So look at this image and memorize the positions and practice them. And repeat these images too. Okay, always practice it, and you can see the hip goes to where it has to go. It goes lower than our knees. So we got a good position in the back, good coordination, a good movement. So always practice the low bar squat. And yeah, it's from starting strength. It's for relatively beginner lifters, relatively, because they get to lift really heavy. But you can apply this to just by switching the program to really heavy lifters. You know, this guy is doing a low back squat. He's not doing a high bar squat. It's more comfortable, it's safer, and you can lift actual weight, a lot of weight with it, right? So again, try to keep the differences between having the high bar squat, the front rack squat, right? And try to move with your back, knees, and hips in a good relationship, right? Look at the difference with that torso straight, because if not, the weight's gonna fall when you clean it, right? This is the thing. You have to have the flexibility in the ankles and the hips and good flexion and extension in your back to do that, right? So in order to do what these great Chinese lifters do, you should not be doing 20 reps, a million cleans. You should be trying to lift heavier and become more mobile, and understanding that the high bar squat, the low bar squat, and the front rack squat and the overhead squat are very different things, and how your back is going to relate to your hips, your knees, and your ankles when you do it. And you have to practice them all in order to have a healthy back in a good squat that you can lift a lot of weight with. Okay, so I hope this video was useful, and you can learn from these images and my videos with my lack of mobility. Hopefully in a couple of months I'll be posting my improvements, not only in the weight I'm lifting, but in the way I'm moving. So that movement pattern will improve a lot for you guys too if you apply this. Check out Starting Strength, that channel, so you can learn more about the weighted squat and how to get stronger, to get better with your back and reduce that back pain. You need to not only to do mobility, you need to get stronger. So please like, share, subscribe, and thanks for watching. See you later. Bye-bye.